So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the CMSA Town Hall here tonight on October 29th, a couple of days before Halloween. So we really appreciate you taking the time. I know there's probably some last-minute costume adjustments that you're doing with your little ones, especially given this age group, the U7s to 9s tonight. We're going to run through a few pieces globally, what we're doing at CMSA to give you an awareness about that, but then also really targeted pieces as to why the Grassroots League is built the way it is, and also what you can expect through the Grassroots League this winter. So with no further delay, I want to welcome everyone and acknowledge the land upon which we live, work, and play. And in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we do live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. I'd encourage you to become curious about their stories, about their culture, and about the land upon which we have settled. My name is Jordan Stewart. I'm the CMSA Technical Manager, and I'm delighted to be speaking with you tonight and having an open conversation with you. I've coached players from U4 to university-age players, and before this, I used to work for Alberta Soccer as their regional coach for Southern Alberta and their Recs director. My focus for that role was around player development and their high-performance programs, as well as a lot of district outreach, which was supporting the various districts around the province, and as well with coach education. So I became largely their Swiss Army knife. And that kind of Swiss Army knife approach has had me have experience in grassroots clubs like the ones that you're members of, professional club academies that unfortunately no longer exist with FC Edmonton, youth national team development systems, colleges, universities, district outreach, community outreach, and lastly, where I'm at right now at a district governing body with CMSA. On the line tonight as well, we have Kim Kerr, who's going to be answering any questions that you might have. You'll notice that we've disabled both the microphones and the cameras for tonight. That's in an effort to keep the bandwidth high and to keep us rolling through the presentation, not in an effort to silence people and not address questions. So if you do have any questions at any moment, please put them in the chat and Kim will be monitoring that. And if Kim's unable to answer something, which is highly unlikely because Kim is literally the MVP of CMSA through all the scheduling, all of the knowledge that she has, and all of the roles that she has worked in CMSA. She is the Swiss Army knife of CMSA and literally the MVP. So we're lucky to have her on tonight to help us out with those questions as well. We want to look back, of course, and start things off with celebrating our successes from 2023. And while people might go, well, wait a minute, it's 2024, Jordan. You're right. We haven't quite finished our year-end video for this year. So please sit back and enjoy this video as we reflect on where we've come from to know where we're going. And we couldn't be more delighted to be with you tonight and be with you through this indoor season and to have your kids playing the beautiful game. It's an exciting time for the game here in Canada, and we are delighted that you're on this journey with us. I'd be remiss if I didn't start off tonight by actually talking about the player pathway within Canada and how things work. And while we might be starting out with a lot of the young humans that we have on the call tonight, in terms of where their journey is beginning, there has to be an awareness of where they're going as well. And so CMSA operates on this diagram stages 1 that you can see, 2, which is where we're at, the U7s to 9s, stage 3, which would be our learn to train, and then up into stages 7. And someone's probably going, wait a minute, how do you jump from stage 3 to stage 7? Well, this is based around Active for Life and the long-term player development framework. So stages 4 is really the APDL, when the children become U14 and if they're of an ability and want to play in a development league. And then they can flow through into things like the Rex programs, high performance programs, Whitecaps programs right now, and then up all the way through into professional levels, which now include our women's professional franchise, the Calgary Wild. So if there's any young girls on the call tonight that want to dream and want to play professionally, they can do so as of next year. Well, they're going to have to wait a few years, but the club will be here next year playing professionally. If that doesn't work out for them, there's obviously colleges, universities, League One, USL2, UWS leagues, and then also into the adult leagues here from both a competitive for life and a community for life stream. There's also some other pieces that we want to share with you. So every single season we create what's called the CMSA Program Handbook. This is what we give to the clubs to base their registration packages off of. So I'd encourage you to maybe go find this on our website and to maybe reflect and review against your club's registration package, if you can remember some of those things. Ask yourself some questions like, is it accurate? And is it aligned? And if it's not, then there's probably other problems that you need to address and other questions you need to be asking as well. And while that sounds like I'm slagging the clubs off, I don't mean to, because our member clubs do fantastic work and they've gone through a fairly extensive process to achieve what's called SQS, so Standards for Quality Soccer. And we're delighted and very proud of all of our member clubs for achieving at least the minimum club standard within Canada here of SQS. You'll see here the bulk of our clubs currently licensed as SQS, and they have to meet 30-odd criteria to be classified as an SQS holder. Our National Youth Club license holders have to go through about 140-odd criteria that's put out through Canada Soccer and aligns things like their technical plan, their operations, their governance, their financial model, etc., to make sure that they're doing well and doing right by, at the end of the day, the players and the consumers of soccer, because it is still a pay-to-play model largely. And so what did SQS do? Well, SQS really brought us some minimum coaching standards. And what we'll speak to tonight is that modified safe sport roster requirement for our U3 to our U11 age groups. And it's forced the clubs really to do what's right and not what's easy, and to be putting a focus on developing their coaches and making sure that the coaches go through a certain amount of training to be qualified to deliver this game. Because while it's easy for people to step up and volunteer, well, maybe it's not so easy sometimes, but while that's easy, we want to make sure that this is a safe and enjoyable and developmentally appropriate experience for your children. So we're monitoring things, and we're not allowing them to just put one person on all of the rosters that fulfills all of the eligibility criteria, because all coaches are going to need the required training to be eligible on those rosters. And so what are some of those eligibility criteria? Well, we've created this enormous diagram here, and while it looks simple, it took much longer to flush out than someone would think. And so previously in CMSA, before club licensing and SQS, you'll see there in the red boxes where they intersect, you'll see that an EPIC, so a police clearance with vulnerable sector search, and respect in sport was what was required to be coaching. And SQS and club licensing has morphed it to include, you'll see there the star under the fundamentals theory comportion, because that course is now broken into 2 parts. That's required education for coaches, assistant coaches, developmental coaches, etc. And all team officials, so including the team manager that might be planning a tournament or fundraising or a bottle drive or something like that. Well, the team managers are the check marks, and the coaches are included in those check marks as well. You'll see there the plus sign under the fundamentals for the practical component, and that's highly recommended coach training. We had a coach this past week say, I'm so glad that I've done this optional course. And this isn't just me trying to promote it. This is the live testimonial, because their training sessions have become better and more meaningful immediately after taking that course. So we share a lot of tips and tricks and try and help coaches put a couple of tools in their toolbox for the upcoming season. So if you're interested and you're curious, we create these little roadmaps so that it helps people to go step by step through it on a choose your own adventure style, depending on the age group that you're coaching. Okay, so if you want more information, that can be found again on our website. Our 3-year coach education dates are in front of you as well. So we would love to see if there's coaches on the line. Love to see you out either January 3rd, or I believe we've just introduced another course on December 14th as well. So there's a couple more opportunities for you in that fundamentals age group. I'm sure Kim might already be fielding questions in the chat around how do we make a schedule and what goes into that. Well, here's what happens with the schedule. Is we ask the clubs to put in all of their teams, and it's called team entry. So they say we have, I don't know, 5 U14 girls teams that'll play in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, etc. We have 85 in this age group, etc. Then what we do is we compile all that list and we put it all together and bring all of our clubs in for what we call the Club Connect. And the Club Connect is an opportunity for them to see how all the divisions are formed, and then to say, oh, that team shouldn't be there, or your team should be moving up or down or left or right, or trying to really find a division that's going to be appropriate for that team. Then we finalize all of that by sending that out to the clubs. We evaluate that against all of the field permits we have, because in indoor, if you've seen the news recently, we have a massive facility crunch. We are essentially operating at full capacity right now. Like if another 5 teams came in, we would have to say, I'm sorry, we're unable to have you play this indoor. We are that full. And so what we don't want to have to do maybe next year is to say, these leagues are capped at this number of teams and kids. Everyone else, we're really sorry. So we'd ask you if you have a moment to make sure that you're advocating for facility development, for facility improvement, and facility modifications that we need to keep fulfilling these kids' dreams and to keep them playing the game at the end of the day. We build the schedule based off of all those divisions and the limited field permits that we do have, because we share it with other user groups and sports, etc. And then we try and manipulate it a little bit. And Kim does an amazing job with another woman called Rachel in CMSA to manage all of that and to literally schedule around 6,400 games this indoor season from U7 to U19. I'm sure I've missed a few, and I'm probably not giving Kim and Rachel the credit they deserve, but there is a ton of games that they schedule every single season. Then, of course, we do it all over again from season to season. I want to make sure that there's a global understanding as well about the conduct expectations that we expect, and that everyone on this call is going to be setting the standard of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So I'd encourage you to cheer and support your children, or cheer for and support your children, to not be critical of your coaches. They've stepped up, they're volunteering, they're giving their time, and to also create a positive sporting environment that people want to come back to over and over. Because when we choose to lower ourselves to a level that we're just wrestling with pigs, well, the pigs actually love it, and you just get covered in you know what. So I'd encourage you to elevate ourselves, encourage us to make a positive sporting environment, because the culture of the game is vitally important to retaining kids in the game. And if we don't retain them, we can't develop them. So I'd encourage you to reflect on maybe your behavior or some other parents within your group's behavior, and to encourage them to be positive. The field marshals, if you're in leagues U10 and above, and if you have another child that's maybe older, They're going to be wearing an orange armband. It empowers that individual to act on behalf of the referee up in the stands and to really try and help manage some of the spectators' behavior that sometimes goes a little sideways. We want to make sure that all of those referees that are from our U10 and above leagues, that they're not being abused, and it's not going to be tolerated at all. So if you are ever a field marshal in one of your older children's games, please make sure that you go down to the field level and be involved in that pregame chat with the referees, coaches, and captains. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this call because really that is secondary to tonight. I want to update people on what we've been doing around the Empower Her initiative for women and girls in soccer. We launched a She Can Ref program that is connecting and addressing some of the issues that women face through refereeing. We built out additional female-only entry-level courses to continue to build capacity in our female refereeing cohort, because that new professional women's team, the Calgary Wild, don't even have a Calgary-based female referee that could referee in that league. We simply don't have anyone of that standard and level quite yet to be able to referee that. So we're taking a long-term approach and wanting to build capacity. And then lastly, on March 7th, our Free Soccer Friday is going to be in honor of International Women's Day for 2025. So we'd encourage all of the young girls, the mums, the sisters, the aunts, the grandmas to come out and play and be around the game and be together. I'm going to zip ahead a couple of slides as we don't really need to speak to them too much here. I want to speak maybe a little bit about some additional coach education that we've been offering. We offer what's called our Technical Culture series, where if the presenter allows, we record and then put it up on our YouTube account. We've had some phenomenal guests, including the head of the Czech FA in methodology and Martin Vlick. We've had Chris McKaig, who's was presenting on how it is being an agent in the game and what parents need to know if your child is interested in playing professional soccer. Again, those resources are on our YouTube. There's also an MLS Next goalkeeper education series if coaches, you want to understand maybe a little better how to work with your goalkeepers. There's body confidence sport webinars that are ongoing as well, and Making Headway is undergoing a refresh. So while it's not required education for our coaches at this age, it is very much encouraged for them to be taking some of those coach education initial pieces. Something that maybe some of you have attended would be Free Soccer Friday. We'd encourage all of you to attend Free Soccer Friday because it's a phenomenal opportunity for these kids to be developing social and life skills and to be enjoying the game in an unstructured environment. And someone probably goes, well, wait a minute, how do kids develop in an unstructured environment? Well, it's interesting because one of the common threads through a lot of talent development research out there is mixed age play in an unstructured environment without adults there to mess it up, essentially. And so we know that these kids will go and have to find their way, integrate within a game, learn someone's name, advocate for themselves potentially to get playing time, and likely play against players older or better or younger or worse, etc., in that mixed age unstructured environment. In these can be the key to both unlocking some talent development, but also to breaking down all barriers associated with participating in soccer, because it is free and all you've got to do is sign the waiver to participate. You'll see there are a couple of dates that are out of date for this presentation, but Free Soccer Friday happens the first 3 Fridays of every month predominantly, and it's available on our website, all of the upcoming dates. So I'd encourage you to attend or bring your kids out. It'd be a great time to drop your kid off, and if you need to go and grab groceries or just a couple hours of quiet, well, this can definitely give you that as well. We'll mention also the adverse driving conditions policy that we do have at CMSA, and all of the CMSA games and match days proceed unless the City of Calgary closes their roads due to winter conditions. So if it has a dump of snow that the roads are closed, well, then you'll be contacted through email likely, and you'll be contacted both through your club and likely through CMSA straight to you to make sure that you know that those matches are canceled there. And before I dive into everything U7 to U9, we want to make sure that there's some clarity around what CMSA's role is and what we do and what your club does, okay? So CMSA organizes all the matches in your season schedule. So those match days that you're going to attend at either the Shane Homes West Soccer Dome, the Genesis Center, or Calgary Soccer Center for the U7s to 9s, we organize all of those match days. Your club organizes your child's team practices and training sessions, whatever that looks like. That's what they do. In terms of placing your groups, we work collaboratively with the member clubs to form the most fitting divisions and to put them into the U7s, the U8s, U9s, etc. Your club will organize your child onto their team on match day within their club. It might change, and we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. CMSA then puts coaches through a formal coach training. Like we've mentioned, there's the theory, there's the practical, there's police clearance, there's respect in sport for these ages, and it's your club's job to find and retain and develop its coaches as well. In terms of jerseys, we provide all of the U7 to 9 Grassroots League jerseys for 4 clubs who order with us. And I want to be really clear about that because not all clubs take part in this. It gives the clubs free jerseys, free jersey, free socks, free shorts, thanks to a massive sponsorship by Shane Homes. And what your club could do is likely order their own jersey. So it's important to check with your club to see who's got the jerseys and where you're getting them from. Okay. I'm going to come up for air for just 1 sec and look just through the chat in case there's a couple of questions there that I need to deal with. Something about mixed ability teams. I will definitely be chatting about that shortly, but it looks like Kim has smashed out everything else. Thanks so much, Kim. We'll continue rolling. So this indoor season with the U7s to U9s. Okay, some key changes. Well, the Santa Soccer Saturday returns. It was a key change last year, so it's going to be an open day where any family can come at any moment to Shane Homes West Soccer Dome on December 14th and play. Right, you can come play. There's going to be Santa. I don't know if we've got some hot chocolate planned, but there's going to be a great day planned just before we break for the holiday season there. And just a fun take on what a match day can maybe look like. In terms of those mixed ability groups, this is something that is new this year. This is something that we tried to introduce 3 or 4 years ago when we built the Grassroots League with the clubs. The club said, no, let's do social relationships and ability-based groupings at that time. Well, we've been working through that for about 3 years now, and the clubs really have gotten sick and tired of the I would say 3 or so detractor clubs that choose to run evaluations, choose to tier their U7, U8, U9 players, and put a best with best group together, which I'll get into, but it really has no bearing on talent development, on talent ID, on child development, and it doesn't produce better outcomes. So we got together with them all at that Club Connect in September, and we said, right, this isn't working. You've all acknowledged that this isn't working. What's the alternative that you want to explore in terms of grouping your players? And the vast majority of them, as I say, outside of those kind of 3 or 4 detractor clubs, say, well, we just make mixed ability groups, and this is how we do it, because it's kind of easier for us as clubs as well. And there's really opportunity for all players, whether they're brand new to the game this year or whether they've been playing and training every single night in their basement with their older siblings and their parents since they were 2 or 3 years old or could walk. The developmentally advanced crew can fit in perfectly well with the new to soccer crew. There's plenty of research, and while it's adapted from an academic setting, that shows the achievement gap is less and that there is no difference to those high performers, if I can even call a 7 or 8 year old a high performer, compared to a new to soccer kind of player. So the clubs have said, we will group our players in a mixed ability grouping. So if you're a part of one of those clubs who chooses to continue to not buy into these philosophies, you're essentially going to have a really tough indoor season. There's not going to be much in it for you. There's not going to be much in it for the other kids that you play. And while you think you might be doing better by putting all of the better kids or more developmentally advanced kids together, you're really harming them in the long run. Because even some of our data and research is showing that the kids who have gone through this grassroots league like that, they're actually dropping out at quicker rates than the kids who have been in mixed ability groupings. So the retention of them is actually quite worse, and it's not providing better long-term outcomes either. I'm sure there'll be more questions about that, but I'm going to keep rattling on and we can always get into that. So when we built this, we said, what are we doing? What are we doing? And you'll see now on your screen a ton of a bar chart with a ton of colors on it, right? That was our player registration numbers by season that you can see on your screen. And so we had some trends. We had some great trends from the U7s to U9s, but the data is a bit misleading because that's when we required all the clubs to be registering their house league players as well. And then you'll see some more worrying trends longer term in terms of the decreases in numbers of players from U10 all the way through to U19. And while this season's numbers aren't built into this quite yet, you'll see that there is a problem. And there's also a problem as well in terms of what we were doing, in terms of grouping the best players with the best players from 7, 6, 8, 9, 10 years old, etc. Because it wasn't producing top level players either. This data is about 8, 10-ish years old, and I'm going to be revising it shortly. But you'll see that the number of professional players that we had out of Canada was literally the worst in the CONCACAF region. And that if your child really wants to play professionally, I would say move to Costa Rica or move to Mexico immediately. Because we're 10th in the world in terms of number of registered youth players. We're number 10. And we're statistically the worst country in the industrialized world at developing elite professional level players. So if we weren't retaining them, we're not developing top level players, well, what do we need to do? Well, we need to change at the end of the day. And the change is the same as we don't smoke on airplanes. Coca-Cola is not medicine anymore. And we have seatbelts in our cars, much to the chagrin of my 4- and 2-year-old who would rather be bouncing around the car on our trips to Saskatoon and Edmonton. But we said, well, we don't want to just change things because changing things just for the sake of change doesn't actually improve. We want to improve things. We want to make it better rather than just change. Because within this youth sports sector specifically, there's a growing concern that the current structures and programs do not facilitate the achievement of the desirable outcomes, such as providing sport for all or developing elite athletes. And I love it. I love it when people go, well, why don't you just do it the way hockey does it? That's a great question. And it's a good question for all of the hockey people who are calling us now, asking how we're doing things and looking to share that knowledge. Because our player retention numbers are improving compared to hockey. Our player attraction numbers are skyrocketing compared to hockey. So they're becoming really conscious about what we're doing. And they're starting to ask questions and become curious. Because, well, we want kids to enjoy the game. We want them to be active. And we need to acknowledge that we exist in a culture that we have a 4-corner model of player development, but we're choosing to look at it as if we address the mental and social and emotional needs of the child, that we will get technical, tactical, and physical outcomes from it. And that we will progress them from participating in the game to progressing in the game and performing in the game. Because we want life lessons from the game transferring into skills for life. And it's our job to offer accessible, inclusive, and child-centered and enjoyable youth programming to all youth, regardless of their socioeconomic, their race, their religion, their gender, their sexual preference, etc., because we want to be developing better people rather than just skilled individuals and skilled performers. Hence, going back to that mixed ability piece. How does maybe someone who's more developmentally advanced interact with someone who's new to soccer? Where's the leadership? Where's the communication? Where's the support? Where's the guidance? Where's the camaraderie? Where is that sense of team and community? Can we cultivate that? And we need to also acknowledge that we exist in a really complex ecosystem and that there's lots of influences on, at the end of the day, the child and the human that's in the middle of this diagram. There's environmental and systemic and personal influences that are going to be guiding them and influencing them. And so I'd ask you maybe to reflect on how you believe your club or coaches has made your little rosters, your teams, your match day groups, how they've selected their players, if there's been some sort of evaluation criteria, which, to be completely honest, blows my mind. And I'll almost guarantee you that a lot of the evaluation criteria is based on subjective observation. There's maybe some objective rating scale that maybe the evaluators know what a 1 and a 5 and an 8 and a 10, etc. are for that age level, for that context. But I'll almost guarantee you when they're starting to build these out, if they're not by mixed ability, it is purely by ability and skill. That is completely subjective, completely perceived, and often a highly anxious environment at a tryout, assessment, evaluation. Use any adjective or synonym that you want that will mean the same thing. And really, all of the research around talent ID and talent development, talent selection, skill acquisition, nonlinear pedagogy shows absolutely no correlation between skill and performance at the ages of 9 to 12, which is just where your children are starting to get into, and elite level performance. So my question would be, why does your club continue to do that? They either aren't understanding what the research is telling them, or they're too ignorant to actually look up and listen to what the research is telling them. So we knew we had to change. That traditional model of selecting a number of players based on their current performance level right now, putting them in a team, and then competing them against other teams that are at the same level is flawed in these following ways. It's not going to predict potential or future performance very accurately. It often turns away those players who might have high potential, but might just be new to soccer and are inexperienced relative to their peers. Early selection, tryouts, evaluations before physical maturation, so puberty, implies the early exclusion of the majority, and it's going to discourage those that might otherwise become as good or better if they're given the time and chance to develop. And the characteristics that define talented athletes in early age, they're bigger, they're faster, they've been doing it slightly longer than the others, aren't actually the characteristics that define elite athletes later on in their career. And also, if we put all the developmentally advanced ones together, who do you think ends up coaching that group? Well, you as parents will probably say, well, if that's my kid, I want a really good coach for them. Right. So the really good coaches at those ages focus on a very finite number of players rather than developing more coaches to develop more players. So the better players get better coaches. And we cast away all of the rest that say, oh, you get the volunteer who can only do this, or has never played soccer, or is this, or is that, or is intimidated, or has been voluntold or guilt tripped into coaching. That's what the majority get. And yet none of the data, none of the research correlates to that. But there's obviously a misalignment, because I think we all have an expectation that our kids will start at A and end up at Z, and that it's linear, and that there's constant progression, and there's a defined beginning and end. But the reality looks more like this, and your child's sporting journey will look like this. If you're really, 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 really tremendously lucky, it won't look like this. But the vast majority, the 99.9, will look like this. And it's non-linear. There's ups, there's downs, there's forwards, there's backwards, there's sideways, there's lefts, there's rights. It's all over the place. And hopefully there's no defined endpoint, and they continue to play long into adulthood. So I'd ask you to maybe reflect which one you believe your child's sporting journey is going to look like. And then maybe ask, how am I going to support them through that sporting journey, because there are going to be bumps and bruises and such. So we want to make sure that our environments are good for non-linear development to take place. So things like open rosters, things like mixed ability groupings, things like the ability for coaches to be moving players from field to field and changing things up based on who their opponent is or where they're playing, etc., is really important, because then we can start to meet the needs of the individual and not worry about the team and group performance as much. And there's always a conversation about this. Well, Jordan, CMSA and you are ruining competition. You're ruining competition. There's no competition when you have a mixed ability group. There's no competition when you play in a festival format. There's no competition when we don't keep score. Well, I'd actually argue the exact opposite, because children will compete. You put them in a game, you put them against an opponent, you put them with a ball or a puck or a birdie or anything, they are going to compete. Because if you look at the image on the left-hand side of your screen, one's in socks, the other's in jeans. I guarantee you there's no scoreboard, but they're competing. They want the ball. They want to score. And it's our job as adults to make sure that we support and we're not comparing. Because at the end of the day, comparison is the thief of joy. It's the thief of joy. So how do we make sure that we continue to have joy within the game? And we're often viewing competition as this role of master. Yeah, it's the thing that develops the players. And it honestly, when it's in that role, it doesn't serve the athlete in their long-term development. Competition, the match day, is their test. See where they're at. Oh, what did we work on in training? Did it transfer to the match? If it didn't, I need to, as a coach, go back and reevaluate my learning environment in terms of a training session. We need to make sure that we do that. And so all of this is based upon a bedrock of both a ton of research, a lot of collaboration with our clubs, but also long-term player development, which was around 2008, 2009, which it was launched. You'll see this as frameworks for a lot of sports, if not all sports, and some of them call it long-term athlete development. You'll see match guidelines, you'll see how big the ball should be. And what Canada Soccer has done is they have taken that and created their grassroots standards. So they've modernized it a little bit and given us more clarity on what is expected. And when it boils down to the U7s, 8s, 9s, you'll see it right on your screen right now. And you'll see how closely we are aligned and how far off we are on some things. So you'll see there on coach qualifications, that is old. That has even been revised further with that modified Safe Sport roster that we were talking about. You'll see here things like a maximum game time per player per day of 60 minutes, right? That hour of physical activity, right? You'll see pop-up goals that they're saying 3x5. Well, guess what? We unfortunately use a 4x6 because they're economical and they're incredibly fast to set up and they're durable. So you'll see those at your match day. You'll see the U8s and 9s recommended a 5x8, right? We play with our U8s on that same 4x6 and our U9s play on a 6x10, right? So we're a little bit off there, but we're darn close. You'll see field sizes, and what you'll see is we're a little bit off there as well. Our pitch size is about 18x25. Okay, so it's a little small for those U8s, but our U9s, it fits nicely on. It'll be a little maybe touch short for our U9s, but it's as close as we can get given our facility constraints right now. Okay, you'll see this, restarts from the sidelines, pass in or dribble in, which is what you will see in the Grassroots League. If there are throw-ins, you should be asking the coaches and the people facilitating the games what they're doing, because it's not recommended. We want 1v1 occurrences. We want players to have time on the ball. We want them to dribble and be creative and show their skills and show their moves from the sideline. And the ball gets restarted quicker when it's a pass or a dribble in. You'll see things like retreat lines. Well, we don't have retreat lines right now, but the 7s and 8s will run back to their goal after they score. that gives the other team an opportunity to get the ball out of their goal, and they've retreated. So it gives them an opportunity to play and make up territory. U9s will have formal kickoffs. You'll see unlimited stoppages on the fly. So just come off and on as we go. And coaches are there to facilitate the game and the match day experience for those players. You'll see fair playing time for all players. And you'll see a festival format. Okay? How did we build out the Grassroots League? I know that this is lengthy, and thank you very much for staying with us. There's only been about 4 or 5 that have dropped off, and clearly it's maybe because it's been a lot of global so far. Well, we've based it off of some other research from around the world. So Manchester United did a 4v4 pilot scheme years ago with the FA, the English FA, I should say, with the Department of Exercise and Sports Science at the Manchester Metropolitan University. And what they did is a quantitative analysis of different match formats and a qualitative analysis. So they just asked people questions and got their feedback. And the results are as follows. You can see that in a 2-goal game, right? So 2-goal, no goalkeepers, way more passes, lots of scoring attempts, lots of goals, lots of 1v1 play, lots of dribbling skills. In terms of a line ball game, so dribble over a line to score, no goalkeepers, no nets, you'll see that there's lots of goals and tons of dribbling skills because you actually have to dribble the ball. When you put a goalkeeper in there, like the U9s have, you get lots more 1v1 encounters, tons of passes, but you get less goals. Logically, there's a goalkeeper in there, right? But you get plenty of scoring attempts. In a 4-goal game, so my team defends 2 and attacks 2, you get tons of scoring attempts. Obviously, you've multiplied the number of goals you can defend and score in. But then when you see 8v8, and this is going back to that conversation that a lot of people have, and they say, well, the U9 should be playing 7v7. Sure, somewhere else in the world, they play 7v7 at U9. But wouldn't it be so much better if they had more time on the ball, more scoring chances? They had more opportunities to show their skills. They had more scoring attempts. For me, players are going to enjoy that more. Players are going to develop quicker and more through a system like that. And you can look to what the Germans are doing right now with the DFB and how they're reformatting all of their younger age groups. This research is readily available to you, so I'm not making it up. But they're literally doing what we did 3 years ago. So imagine that if that is considered maybe world class, hell, we've been doing this for 3 years already. Who knows if we're going to be world class yet, but we'll see. When they ask the parents, the club directors, the players questions, it shows there that they largely enjoyed it. But you see that the parents, maybe there was a disconnect, that they maybe didn't understand, or maybe there was some confusion or something around that, or they just thought, no, this is rubbish, we don't want to do this. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to have quadrant-based match days with open rosters. Okay, so I've mentioned that. Open rosters means they can play, if you've got a 6-year-old in U7 that's developmentally advanced, you can put them with the U8s, the U9s. You don't have to fill out any paperwork. There's no one going to ask you questions. We're allowing the clubs a tremendous amount of autonomy and flexibility to do what's right for the players. Okay, for that individual. Okay. And then it's really hard for us as parents not to be comparing and go, wait a minute, they were just playing with us last week. Why are they playing with the U9s this week? Or they were with the U9s, they're playing in the U11 squad this week. It's just the way it is. And if you give your child enough time, they'll probably get there as well. They play in a small-sided game format, which we've briefly talked about. So the U7s will play 3v3. The U8s will play 4v4. And the U9s will play 5v5, and that's including a goalkeeper. So you'll see 1 goalkeeper and 4 players on the field, playing against 1 goalkeeper and 4 players. The U7s and 8s, we say no goalkeepers. But listen, someone is going to send me an email that was on this call because they weren't tuned in enough and say, Jordan, you said no goalkeepers. You know what? If there's a 6 or 7-year-old that just really loves playing in goal and wants to stand there in the little 4x6 goal, just let them. What's the difference, right? It's not going to make a world of difference. We're not saying you have to have goalkeepers. We're not saying you cannot. If some child loves it, let them play in goal. It's about them and their game. And we want them to play. Previously, we would have a roster of 12 players that would play 3v3 in these kinds of age groups. Well, what happens to the other 9 players that are sat on the sideline? Well, they're not developing. They're not even touching the ball. So we have shrunk the roster sizes right down because we want these kids to play. Because 80% of parents, 93% of players, and 94% of coaches indicated that playing time was very to extremely important to youth sport participation. If it's 60 minutes that we want them to play, well, right now we can only get them to 45 in indoor based on transition times and rotations, etc. We want them to play as much of that 45 to 50 odd minutes that they're going to as they possibly can. I feel like we've beat this one to death a little bit. This says 3 20-minute matches. That's in our outdoor, so we try to keep things consistent. In indoor, we have to shrink that a little bit. It'll be 3 15-minute matches, right? When your team scores, run back, touch your goal, while the other team gets the ball in place. There's no formal kickoffs. We've tried to strip away as many rules as possible at these young age groups. And someone's going to say, well, how does that help to develop players? How does that help for them to learn the game? Well, we hope they learn the game from age 6 to age 66. This is a process. They don't need to worry about offsides and throw-ins and subs and the rest of it right off the hop. Make it simple. Make it inviting. Let's keep them involved, okay? The U8s, you'll see something very similar except for 4v4. It says 3 20-minute matches. It should say 3 15. Apologies for that typo. The U9s, I've talked about that. On their match day, they'll play 2 25-minute matches. So a bit of an expansion, right? They'll have formal kickoffs, okay? So you'll see that at the U9. Now, someone's going to say, well, where does the kickoff take place? Coaches, do your best to say, that looks about half. Play. Because it's about ball rolling time, not about it being the most precise and sterile and perfect environment ever. Okay? You'll see here all of the match day dates. You'll see the mixed ability piece. You'll see everything that you need to know along those lines. Okay, so full matches. You'll see February 22nd has got a little star beside it because that's our big wrap-up day. There's some medals usually. There's soccer balls. There's all sorts of stuff that gets given away to the kids as a little reward piece for their participation and also just to acknowledge their development through the game as well. There could be some moments when things get a little lopsided in some of the games. Even in a 15-minute game, if you have 1 or 2 players that is miles better and is, developmentally advanced compared to everyone else on that field, well, they're going to have some success and they might score a few goals. That's okay. We'd encourage coaches to use a 4-up, 1-up strategy where if their team might be down by 4 or 5-ish goals, put an extra player on. Play 4v3. Play 6v5. Totally fine. This is about giving them the best opportunity to develop and a game that fits them when they are there. Because if you go out and watch them at recess, they'll say, right, the 3 kids who play at a club and have been playing since they're, 2 or 1 or can walk or whatever, you play against us 10. And it's 3v10, and that's how we can even things up. So why can't we as adults do that? Because the only thing we can try and do is screw it up. So let's keep it as pure as possible. If it's really not going well, we'd be encouraging the clubs to be changing players, right? Or changing their entire groups amongst themselves. Oof, that game didn't go very well. Let's make sure that we make a note that we swap those 2 players maybe the next time we play them, or do it right then and there. Or if it's really not going well and you can't do that, mix up the 2 teams. Get some pennies, which are all over the match day surface, and penny them off and just get a more even game going. And then in the U9s, if you want, swap the goalkeepers. Because if one's facing a lot of leather and doing a lot of defending and saving a lot of shots, Well, the other one might be working in possession, or they might be sat there doing absolutely nothing. So why don't we just swap them so we can develop both of them during that time? Okay. A brief diagram there of where each of the clubs is going to be playing this season. Okay, so that gives you an idea of where your match day hub is going to be for your club. Those match day hubs are in the Northeast, the Genesis Center. The Northwest is Shane Homes West Soccer Dome. And then the Central and kind of South clubs are going to be at Calgary Soccer Center for the duration of the Grassroots League. On match day, want to make sure that there's some acknowledgement and some awareness of what is CMSA's role, because we will be on site within every single match day, but also what's the club's role. And so the club has got to roster all their players, obviously, and enter their teams, and have to have a technical lead on site that's the one responsible for developing coaches and moving players from match to match to find meaningful competition on the day. They're going to modify those groups if things aren't going well, because those activities demonstrate a commitment to providing a developmental-oriented match day experience and collaboration between the clubs to put every kid first. This requires work. And the lazy way of doing these things is, here's your team, here's your team, here's your team. We'll see you in 6 months, or for tech training or academy, or we'll come out to a couple of your sessions or whatever. That's the lazy way of doing this. Your club and your club staff need to be deeply invested in your child's journey and every single one of their journeys, and trying to do what is right for them at that moment to help them enjoy the game and develop through it. They're also going to be ensuring that they've got the necessary coaches for the mini matches, and then also monitoring those coach behaviors as well. Our role as CMSA is really to build that schedule, book the fields, and then also to go through this match day process where we will be running the logistics of those matches. So your club will gather the players, get them into each field. We will start the clock and then look to manage that rotation and work with the clubs to make sure that we manage that appropriately. Okay, so we're there providing guidance from a logistics standpoint, not from a technical standpoint, from a coaching or player grouping standpoint. We don't do that. We are doing logistics. Okay, so we set everything up, we take it all down, so you as parents don't have to volunteer for all of that stuff. We'll manage the flow, we attend to any emergency, we'll make sure that the first aid kits are there and stocked, and emergency action plans are done, and also have ball pumps on site. So if someone shows up with a flat soccer ball, we can deal with that. You'll see field maps at your centers, hopefully, especially at Shane Homes West Soccer Dome, because we can control that environment. The other two is a little more difficult, but you'll see pitches laid out like that for the U7s and 8s. You will notice that the field number 7 and 11 on this diagram are tough to see, because very faintly, we are expecting parents and spectators and everyone else to stay off of the 11-a-side pitch. So you're not going to get very good Instagram videos from staying back here. And we don't want you sitting on here. 1, because we need to respect the turf. And 2, because we're not sitting courtside at a Lakers game. And we have had some people have players crash into them or balls hit them. We want you off of the playing surface and around the outside. We will do our absolute best to make sure that if teams are on fields 11 and 7, that they are not there for the entire match day, that they get rotated out of there so you can get some great photos, so that you can get a better view of your children playing. Okay? We know this isn't ideal, but this is literally the field layout that we can have to maximize the number of fields to accommodate all of the players, because our game is increased 12% in terms of player registration, indoor over indoor. And do you know how much our field permits increased? That much. Okay? The U9 field map will look like that. You'll see the red fields at the Shane Homes West Soccer Dome transform into two U9 fields and have back-to-back goals like that. You'll see there the coach and player area for the games is in the middle of the pitch. And again, the spectators are around the outside of the field. At the Calgary Soccer Center and Genesis Center, you'll see 3 fields on each of those indoor boarded fields. Now, the colors may change depending on what color of cones they have. It might not be white, orange, and blue, but it will be coned off with mini goals here and here and here, etc. So the teams will play this way and this way. There will be a small area for coaches and players and subs, and a small area there as well at the end. The U9s will look like that, and you'll see that both teams will share the bench areas that are in those indoor boarded fields, and they will play from the goal that is in the wall to a goal that is against back-to-back there. Okay? One question that we always get is around player fees. Our CMSA fee per player this indoor season for these age groups is $118.50. Of that, $6 goes to Alberta Soccer. We don't even see that. So what are we left over with? Well, we're left over with $112.50 per player, or around $8.04 per match day that you attend. Okay? Now, how does that get sliced up? Well, the majority of those expenses, of that $112.50, go towards booking fields for games, paying referees, other league-related expenses. And while you won't have referees, there is a certain acknowledgement that we need to contribute to the overall system in order to make sure that you do have referees when you're at U10 and etc. There's a small portion that help to contribute towards future facility projects and upgrades like the Shane Homes West Soccer Dome and the new Shouldice Bubble. There's a donation to Kids Sport where a portion of those fees goes back to Kids Sport's player assistance program so that we can make sure that we're breaking down barriers to the game. Kids Sport fund soccer registrations to the tune of, I think it's either $500,000 or $800,000 per year. We are the largest recipient of Kids Sport funding in Calgary. So we need to make sure that we're contributing back to that so that kids can play. As we've mentioned, some of them go to Alberta Soccer and Canada Soccer. Even though you don't have referees yet, a small portion of that goes to referee development because our surveys tell us 2 things around referees. We need more and we need better ones. And then also a small portion helps to pay for the CMSA staff and the administration of the game to ensure that we're trying to run things as efficiently as we possibly can and that we continue to innovate and meet the players, coaches, referees, parents' needs within the game. And lastly, I promise I'm almost done. If or when an injury happens, make sure that you go on Alberta Soccer's website and you fill out the form within the first 30 days of injury. What's going to happen is that's going to provide a record so that when you need to access that insurance, or if you do, you can. You have to use your personal insurance first, and then the Alberta Soccer insurance kicks in after that has exhausted. We know that physio and rehab expenses can add up really quickly, and while your children at this age might be built like rubber bands and not get injured, we want to make sure that you have an awareness that this is available for you. And so thank you. I'll jump into some questions after a couple more slides here, but I want to leave you with a video, and really everything starts now. Everything that's about to begin in your child's soccer journey and life for this season is about to start on Saturday, and we couldn't be more excited to be a part of it and to hopefully facilitate match days that are wonderful for your kids.
All right.
And so really all of those things start now. Development, challenge, fitness, belonging, inclusion, camaraderie. It all starts now. And we're thrilled that you have enrolled your kids in soccer and in one of our member clubs as well. So I thank you very, very much to all of you for not only participating in tonight, but being curious. Thank you to your children for playing. And thank you for being fantastic ambassadors of the game and now taking this knowledge and spreading it throughout. There was a question in the chat about shoes on match day. If you look, and what I'll try and do is zoom in on this, right? You'll see these with little tiny rubber that are flexible molded studs. Those are fantastic for any surface that we play indoor soccer with. So they're great for the kind of turf that you're going to see at Shane Homes West Soccer Dome that has that rubber crumb infill. And they're also really good on this kind of a surface that you're seeing here in this image, where it's a carpeted surface. Gives traction on both. So the flat sole is good. If you wear studs and you're up in one of those clubs that are at Shane Homes West Soccer Dome, so studs like your traditional cleats, those will work well on those surfaces. Those will not work well on these carpeted surfaces like what the Calgary Soccer Center has. So if you want an all-purpose or multi-purpose shoe that's going to work across all of them, these are a fantastic option. Okay, so the little rubber molded studs. Okay, they're not hard. They're not like the blades that are hard and formed that would traditionally dig into the ground. These are meant to sit on the surface of the grass, and if it's that turf, dig in just a little bit. Fantastic option and a great question there. I will leave this up on everyone's screen because you may need to contact us at some point. We'd ask that you first contact your clubs and look to work through that communication channel. But if you do need to contact us, it's info@calgaryminersoccer.com, or you can phone us at the number that's listed there. You can also connect across a variety of social media platforms that are listed on your screen. I leave you as well with that image on your screen because we've previously been pulling things in very different directions as clubs, and you can see the limited amount of progress that can be made when we pull things in different directions. We're really starting to get tremendous momentum and pull the game forward in a really, really, really excellent way. So can we continue that? Can we continue to pull it in a similar direction? And can we be on that similar page? There's another question in the chat around the role of the coach. I'm assuming on match day. Role of the coach is to facilitate the match. When I say that, that's a different role than coach your players. Facilitating the match will be things like helping kids understand what a pass and a dribble in is. Helping to say, hey guys, or hey girls, or hey players, that was a foul. And managing that with the other coach that's there. Again, it's about collaboration. It's about putting on the match for the kids and helping them understand the game. It's not about being on the field and coaching them and acting as a referee. Can we be off the field? Can we give the game back to the kids? And can we facilitate a positive environment that's safe and is working for the kids? So if you notice that your group of players that you're working with is dominant against the other group, well, can you have them drop off maybe to a halfway point and allow that other group to play a little bit before you go and press, before you try and win it back? Can you look to flag your club technical lead and communicate with them and say like, hey, we need some other players over here and we need to mix things up or we need to change things. We need to implement some of those strategies to make sure that the game is going well. That's your role as a coach. Now, again, you can coach your players as well and encourage them, but it's about facilitating the game. Because on match day, that's your opportunity to see how well they've learned and maybe what you need to be addressing or what you maybe need to be working on. You have training sessions to go and coach. And so I believe Manuel Pellegrini summed it up best, that the training session is 95% coach, 5% player. And on match day, It's 95% player, 5% coach. So can we give the game back to the kids and allow them a chance to play? Okay. I'm going to stop sharing my screen there quick. There was a couple other questions. How far back does your research go? Some of the research that underpins this goes back to even teaching games for understanding, which was introduced in the 70s and 80s. And the principles that build that, and representative task design, perception action coupling, developmental environments for children, what is child behavior theories. We're mixing in a lot of pieces into developing this, and it feels and looks very simple, but everything that has been put in is quite deliberate and quite intentional. Okay. How do we learn if our club is one of the 3 or 4 that's using tiers and formal evaluations? I've asked around the club and haven't received a direct response of how this looks, not only at U7, but the upcoming years. Probably a good indication is if they can't prove that they're not, they might be. If your child has gone through some sort of an evaluation process, a placement session, an XYZ at these age groups, they're probably trying to assess the players and trying to do those kinds of things. Maybe they're also assessing them a little bit and watching them to go, okay, wait, if we're going to do a mixed ability group, we need to kind of jumble up the kids a little bit. So what I would do is continue to ask the question. You will get an answer. And if you don't get an answer, ask us. And we're not going to blackball people. We're not in this game to say such and such has asked this question and has got an issue with your club. We would like to support you, and we want to make sure that there's consistency and alignment. So we'll go to the club and ask the question as well. I mentioned there at some point 6,400 games, right? If I can make it out to 1% of those games in a year, like, we're doing really well, right? But there's a huge volume, so we have to rely on our clubs as well to be doing what's right at the end of the day, and what modern child development is telling us will be a better outcome. Schedule set in stone, very early time slots, which feels early to have every single game. Wondering if there's any opportunity or instance where we can rotate time slots, give kids an opportunity to not wake up before dawn once in a while. It's a great question. Kim, I'm not sure where things are at with that or what's going on with that, but what we will do is we'll make sure that we include that in a communication that goes out later this week in terms of process and how we've done that. The realities are, like, we have a certain amount of time that we can have the 7s to 9s play in. And honestly, it's especially at the Shane Homes West Soccer Dome, it's a very, very, very tight schedule with the expansion in the game. And we might be adding even more fields to field 14, there might be 15 or 16 at some point on there as well. In terms of rotating the time slots, our surveys consistently have the following feedback from parents especially. We want consistency in our schedule. And we know that that's incredibly difficult to achieve, but we also know that consistency doesn't mean consistently early. And it might sound ridiculous, but this is probably an opportunity for you to be advocating for additional facilities, for developing these kinds of things, because we're running out of room. And when we run out of room, things go earlier and things go later. Or you play less, or you play shorter, right? So we're trying not to do those two variables of playing less or playing shorter. So while 7:45, certainly not ideal. I can completely understand that. Everything's going to be before dawn in the winter time if it's like before 9 a.m. just with when the sun rises and such. And I'll say at least we're not hockey, because if we were to do it the way hockey would do it, well, they'd probably be on the pitch at 7 or 6 a.m. as well. So it'd be even earlier. So we're doing the absolute best we can in terms of trying to facilitate not early kickoffs, but this is kind of our constraints and where we are right now. Question around what's the expectation of coaches to facilitate conflict resolution? If there's some kids playing too rough, it's happened occasionally where there hasn't been a consequence for poor sportsmanship, at least at this level. I would be addressing it with the coaches. The coach's expectation is to facilitate a safe and positive environment at the end of the day. So if there's kids that may be deemed playing too rough, can we have a conversation with them? Can we bring them off onto the side of the pitch and allow them to cool down? In terms of consequence, well, would you want to suspend a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old? I mean, I think that there are other ways that we can do these things, and I think that we can work together as a community to model what those behaviors look like as well. There's going to be some coaches that think that this is their World Cup every single Saturday. It's not. And guess what? You've got a 15-minute match against them, and then you pack on and you've got a 15-minute match against someone else, or 25 minutes. And if it's really, really out of control, come and get the CMSA staff that are on site, and we'll look to address that as well with the coaches and make sure to remind them of their obligations and what they're doing as well. Something about, say, it's refreshing, it's a cool approach without evaluations, festival format for younger kids, very cool and impressed. No problem. We're just trying to do right by the kids at the end of the day. Is the schedule in the CMSA Demisphere account final? That would be a question for Kim. Oh, sorry, Kim addressed some of those. Kim, sorry, I'm behind you in the chat, so apologies. What's the total fee we have to pay to reschedule a game because we're out of town for a tournament in U9? We can't really reschedule these things. As I've said, there's no facility availability, and literally you trying to reschedule your match day means that we need a match day for that entire U9 group that you're playing against. So if you choose to go out of town on a tournament, on you go. You've got some extra matches in on the winter, and we'll make sure that that field gets filled with some other players. So while it's unfortunate that you can't reschedule it, I hope that the tournament is a fantastic experience for you. It looks like Kim has smashed out all of the questions. Kim, I know you need to take off, so please take off. I will stick around for a little bit and address any other questions that might be in the chat or maybe that we haven't addressed yet in terms of what's been asked. I'll stick around for a few more minutes. And if there's people who are typing, give us the please wait, and I'll stick around while the lengthy question gets asked. But again, still 60 odd people on the call right now. So thank you again. Either you've fallen asleep or Dancing with the Stars isn't that enjoyable tonight, and you've tuned in. So thank you again for being curious, for asking questions, for trying to learn. We want to do what's best for the children at the end of the day and give your kids a great experience. And we will work our absolute backside off to try and do that. So thank you again for your attention, for your questions, for your candor, and we look forward to seeing you on the pitch. Hopefully it turns out great. We know it sounds great. The first day is always a difficult one, but it gets better. Trust me, the first day is going to be clunky. It's not going to go well. It's not going to go smoothly, but it will continue to be improving. There's a question there. Is CMSA leaning towards focusing on technical skills at this age and influencing clubs to do so? It's a great question. We go back to a framework of long-term player development. We know that the players have to get comfortable with the ball and have a certain basis of skill at these age groups as they start to enter that golden age of learning. In terms of focusing on skill, and I'll be really, really clear about the word skill compared to technique. Technique would be in the absence of opposition, or direction, or boundaries. That's ball striking. That's dribbling. That's ball manipulation. That's things that you can do in your basement with your kid or in your garage or wherever. That's technique. Skill is around, can I play the right pass to the right foot at the right moment through two opponents to someone who's going to score? That's a skill. So coupling perception around visual cues, perception around decision making, and the action associated with executing a technique with a tactical intention as well. So a skill, to us at least, it needs to be a portion of that training session. We want players to be developing skill, to be exercising decisions, not just dribbling in and out of cones, turning around and running back. There aren't cones that are defenders on the field. So can we have realistic training environments that are representative of the task or the game that they're about to go through, right? Not saying they just need to play games all the time, but they need to be able to see pictures, to try skills, to be comfortable, to be creative, to explore different movement solutions to accomplish the outcome. So in terms of focusing on technical skills, we want skilled players, we want great people, and we want excellent decision makers. All of those things need to be baked into the training at these ages as well, to be making sure that we're getting better players that, you know, are better long term, but also ones that retain and are continuing to play the game long term as well. I hope I've answered the question there. In terms of influencing clubs to do so, these are things like the technical culture series that we run in terms of informal coach and club development sessions. These pieces are baked into the formal coach training and licensing streams, and also in the coach education that we are saying is required. So that theory course, that fundamental theory course, has things like transformational coaching behaviors included in it. That is really the backbone of the coach education system, whether I'm working with U7s or whether I'm working with senior national team players in this country. So if you're curious about transformational coaching behaviors, please research it. Please look it up. It's Jean Cote's research. This is what we're trying to get across with our coaches. We're trying to help clubs modernize in terms of how they deliver sessions and how they develop skilled players, because this field is accelerating at an exponential rate right now in terms of skill acquisition researchers and nonlinear pedagogy. It's wild to try to try and stay ahead of. If you're curious, researchers like Nicola Hodges, Joe Baker, Anders Ericsson, and a plethora of others, Peter Gray in terms of play and risky play. There's a lot of pieces out there that you can look to go and get into some rabbit holes with. There's an availability part for staff and players when pressing the games. Then it shows accepted, maybe declined. Do parents have to do something about that? I'm assuming you're speaking about TeamSnap or some sort of availability app. It always helps your clubs if you do put your availability in for match days, for training, etc. I would encourage you to be up to date with that. That helps them plan sessions, plan their match day groupings, etc. Really important piece for you to be doing as well. The coaching education is very useful for coaches to join the long-term vision. Is there opportunity to educate other parents to bring them on board with the philosophy? By the way, this town hall meeting is a great education for parents. Well, I appreciate the fact that you think this is great. This is being recorded. It always gets published onto our YouTube account. So please share it across parent groups, share it in your WhatsApp chats, your TeamSnap accounts, etc. Because the more people that understand this, at the end of the day, the better this environment is going to be. And while I'm forever indebted to the 100 and change people that tuned in tonight, that's about 8-ish% of the total parents that are in these age groups. So you can tell, while you've done a great job as the 8%, there's the 92% that we need to be looking to reach as well. So please distribute it. We will always be reaching out with information as well. We try to a few times throughout the Grassroots League season I try and produce something weekly, but there's a lot of fires to put out, as you can imagine, with one person who's trying to help support 23 very different clubs, 600 or 800 odd referees, about 3,000 coaches, and 30 odd thousand players a year. It's not an easy one to create a weekly kind of communication as well, but it's something that we can even look to do better and look to reach people as well. So appreciate that. But please share our YouTube videos. They're very helpful. There's a lot of other educational resources on there as well, like the lopsided game strategies, how the Grassroots League operates, which will be in an upcoming email for everyone as well, and links to those videos to help people understand. So again, thank you all to everyone who's joined tonight. Still 30 odd people on the call. I appreciate everyone's time, and look forward to genuinely seeing you all on the pitch. If you see me, please stop me, ask me questions around the centers. More than happy to have a community or a conversation with anyone about anything around the game. Another question around, is futsal in the works? Futsal was a game that was played 3-4 years ago at the U10 to 12 age groups for our kind of tier 1 kids at that time. Tier 1, tier 2, pardon me. COVID happened, and then I came into CMSA, took the job here, and what we did is we hit pause on futsal. And I say pause because it's not a full stop, it's a pause. Futsal is a game that can provide great developmental benefits and outcomes. It's a 4v4 plus a goalkeeper each side, played on a hard court with a heavier ball that doesn't bounce as much. And some of the rules associated make players have lots of 1v1 play, receive the ball under pressure in tight spaces, etc. So futsal was put on pause because we weren't doing a very thorough and comprehensive job of developing that game in a good way. And I'll give you an example. We played on facilities that weren't really futsal facilities. We made do with the infrastructure that we had, much the same way that we're making do a lot of the time right now. We had a little bit of referee education at the time. We had absolutely no coach education around futsal at the time. We had no development mindset around it, because I'll give you an example. We had, our U10, so our 9-year-old boys and girls and players playing with the same size ball that they play with at the Men's Futsal World Cup. That doesn't really make sense if you think about it, because we scale everything on the game, if you will, size 5 with the older age group, size 4, size 3 balls. We scale the fields, we scale the number of players, but we didn't with futsal. And so we asked the question, is this really going to help players when coaches have no experience in it? When we play it in these random chunks throughout their developmental journey, and we haven't actually made it a game that's appropriate for their development. So we just hit pause. And we wanted to hit pause to realign the game, because we knew club licensing was coming out. We knew the grassroots standards were coming out, and those are major changes within the game. So futsal is a game that through this past year, 2024, we've been researching, we've been trying to develop in terms of a plan, so that when there's an opportunity to hit go, that we can hit go and launch futsal again. Whether that is in the next 12 months or whether that's in the next 3 years, we're not 100% sure, but we've been actively exploring it all year, and like I say, developing that plan and what it looks like. We now have some supplemental futsal coach education from Canada Soccer. There's a theory course. Alberta Soccer is developing a piece as well. And there's starting to become some, I would say, greater opportunity for players. You'll notice that there isn't a female futsal national team yet, so that's an opportunity. And once we start to have more clearly defined player pathways, we'll look to redevelop that and bring it back. it looks, feels, smells, tastes like soccer. It is a different game. The tactics are different. The way it's played is different. The rules are different. So it is nuanced, but it is different. So we want to make sure that when it gets relaunched, that it's relaunched appropriately and that it's done really, really well. Great question, though. What can more parents do to support the vision you've presented and keep that going for the long term? Phenomenal question. What you can do, play with your kids. Play with your kids at home. Enjoy the game. Go to a wall with them and kick a ball against a wall. Develop little fun games with them. Get them out to Spruce Meadows and go to a pro game, or go and support the Calgary Wild when they launch in 2025. Watch the game on TV at home. Have a ball in and around your house. I know it might break a few things, but have a ball readily available. Film your kids. Show them what they were doing. These are all little tiny tips and tricks that are going to help them enjoy the game and become more obsessed with learning about it in the long run. When you're at the field, support them, cheer for them, be your kid's biggest fan, not your kid's biggest coach in that environment, unless you're coaching them, obviously, but be your kid's biggest fan and support them. And on the car ride home, it's really simple. It's just the old message of, I love watching you play. Praise effort. Focus on the process, not the outcome. Because if you take care of the process, if you love your kids, if you play with them, if they become really obsessed and they become enamored with the game, they'll develop through it. And it's their journey, and we need to make sure that we keep that in focus, and that we focus on their journey, not their journey compared to everyone else's journey. Because as I've said, comparison's that thief of joy. So horse blinders on. What does your child need? Your child is unique. Your child needs love. Your child needs that, or yourself. And your child needs support. And the more positivity we can surround them with in the game, the more likely they are to continue in sport and physical activity. And honestly, I'm not bothered if it's through soccer, as long as they're healthy, as long as they contribute well to society, and we can leave this society in a better place and the game in a better place. Like, we're doing our job as parents and as adults that are caretakers of the game at the end of the day. But great question. Really, really great question. Okay, for the remaining people, really appreciate it. I'm going to shut things down tonight. There will be a recording on YouTube, probably published tomorrow for you if you wish to view. And just again, thank you so much for being a part of tonight and for joining us. So thank you very much, and have a great night.